In this video, we're going to solve a quadratic-like equation by first rewriting it as a quadratic. The example that I have is 6x to the 2/3 minus 5x to the 1/3 minus 25 equals 0. Now the trick to rewriting this as a quadratic is always to figure out a substitution. Typically, this middle term is going to be our substitute. I'm going to choose u equals x to the 1/3. And now I'm going to figure out what u squared would be. So u squared would be x to the 1/3 squared. I'm squaring both sides. And remember that when I have a power to a power, I multiply those powers, which in this case gives me x to the 2/3. So now I have u equals x to the 1/3 and u squared equals x to the 2/3. If I make that substitution back into my original equation, I get 6u squared minus 5u minus 25 equals 0. All right, now we have a quadratic equation that we should be able to solve by factoring. So I'm going to talk us through factoring this using a little bit of trial and error. I always write my parentheses down first, and then I try to fill in the 4 slots. There are 4 places where I need to put numbers or variables or something that will FOIL back out to be this expression. Thinking about FOILing helps me a lot because I know that I'm going to have to multiply these first 2 terms together to get 6u squared, and I'm going to have to multiply the second 2 terms together to get negative 25. Now, there's really only 2 ways to multiply things together and get negative 25. It could be negative 1 and 25, or negative 5 and 5. So the factors of 25 are 1 and 25, or 5 and 5. Because this one has so few options, I'm going to start by guessing that these last 2 terms will have to be a 5 and a 5. It just seems unlikely to me that one of them is going to be 1 and one will be 25, but if I'm wrong, we can always go back and try something else. Now, these first 2 terms have to multiply together to be 6u squared. So they're each going to have a u on them, and one will have to have either a 1 and a 6 or a 2 and a 3, because they have to multiply together to be 6. So off to the side here, I might make myself a note about the factors of 6. So the factors of 6 are 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. Notice that I'm filling this part in pencil because I'm going to do some trial and error. So now I think, let's see, I'm going to pick 2 and 3, and I'm just going to plop them in here. How about 3 here and 2 here? Now when I one of these 2 is going to have to be negative, one of these 2 5s, so that they'll multiply together to be negative 25. So let's just pick one and make it negative. Now I'm going to multiply this out and see what happens. I'm just going to FOIL. My first 2 terms multiply together to be 6u squared, which is good. My outside terms are negative 15u. My inside terms multiply together to be 10u. And my last 2 terms multiply together to be negative 25. Ooh, I think I got lucky on this one. 6u squared. When I combine my middle 2 terms, I get negative 5u minus 25. So sure enough, when I FOIL this factorization out, I get what I started with. So this must be the correct factorization. So I can go ahead and write that down as my next step. I have 3u plus 5 times 2u minus 5 equals 0. Now that I have my factorization, 3u plus 5 and 2u minus 5 equals 0, I can use the zero product property to find out what u is. I set each term, each piece here, equal to 0, and then solve these little equations. This will become 3u equals negative 5, and u equals negative 5/3. And then this one will become 2u equals 5, and u equals 5/2. Now at this point, it's really tempting to feel like we're done. We found out what u is. However, remember that u is not the variable that we started with. We started with x's. And we had this substitution where u, it was x to the 1/3. That means that I'm not done yet. I haven't finished finding out what x is. So if u is negative 5/3, that means x to the 1/3 is negative 5/3, or x to the 1/3 is 5/2. Now to undo that power of 1/3, I can cube both sides of this equation. Remember that the power of 1/3 is the same as a cubed root, and to undo a cubed root, I would cube both sides of the equation. So let's go ahead and do that now with these equations. I have x to the 1/3 equals negative 5/3. I'm going to cube both sides of that equation. The 1/3 and the cubed power undo each other so that x equals negative 125 over 27. And don't forget about this other solution over here. We'll need to solve that one as well. X to the 1/3 equals 5/2. We will cube both sides and get x equals 125 over, I think that's 8, right? Okay, so there's our two solutions for x. And remember, you can always check these by plugging them back into your the original equation and maybe using your calculator to simplify it.